Okay, so for my project, I had to research which country was most responsible for World War One started. So here's the prompt. Focusing on the diplomatic situation in June 2014, assess the responsibility of each of the countries involved in the coming of World War One. So this is my thesis. The Central Powers were most responsible for the coming of World War One due to the aggressive response they collectively took towards Serbia after Ferdinand's assassination. However, Russia was partially culpable for supporting Serbia, and France was partially responsible as well for supporting Russia. Britain was least responsible and reluctantly entered World War One. Okay, so first I wanted to start by giving some background of what Europe was like at this time during 1914. Okay, so the major powers were split into two rival groups, the Central Powers and the Triple Entente. So the Central Powers were Germany and Austria-Hungary, and the Triple Entente consisted of Britain, France, and Russia. So if you attacked one of these countries, you attacked all of them, like meaning that if you attack Britain, then you're also basically attacking France and Russia. So therefore, any regional conflict could turn into a entire war throughout Europe. So that's actually what ends up happening with the murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who's in Austria. That ends up leading to World War One. So I'm going to get to that later, but that's just why that happened was because one reason why that happened was because the Allies were so closely intertwined. So countries developed plans based on the understanding that if they attacked one country, they would immediately have to deal with that country's allies. So the countries knew that they had to be able to get their armies mobilized and moving quickly. So one example of this is the Shetland Plan. So basically, in the Shetland Plan, Germany, who's in red right here, they wanted to go through Belgium, which is the green country right here, into France, attack France, and then go back through Germany and attack Russia before Russia had a chance to get its army mobilized. So that was the German plan, and they actually end up attempting to make it work, but it fails miserably. Okay, so the different allies and rivals contributed to the arms race because each country needed enough firepower and weaponry to keep up with the other European powers. And they also needed it to defend their colonies and to secure trade with their colonies. So the great powers armed themselves as never before in peacetime, with military expenditures reaching 5 to 6% of their respective national incomes. And all the while, they were trying to maintain the balance of power, which is what we talked about in the Congress of Vienna. That's the Congress of Vienna established the idea that no single nation or nation should be able to gain an unassailable lead. But that didn't really work out because Germany and Britain were started to pull ahead at the beginning of the 20th century. Germany had a really strong military on land, and they had a good industrial base, and they were really trying to expand throughout Europe. And Britain was the largest colonial power, as other people have said. They had a really strong navy, and they were the first country to experience the Industrial Revolution. So that made them a little bit ahead of all the other countries. And so these other major powers in Europe were scrambling to keep up with them, and with them being Germany and Britain. So it just kind of contributed to just the overall sense of tension that was in Europe. Another thing that contributed to tension was new imperialism, which Corey, Carmen, and Megan Rose already talked a lot about. So I just want to touch on it briefly in the context of my PowerPoint. And it's a big idea that the balance of power had ended. Like, that wasn't really how it was going to work anymore. If you didn't get your country, like your world, like your colonies together, then you're just going to be left behind. You're just going to sink into obscurity. So there's just this sense of desperation and paranoia because of this. And the reason I wanted to include this and the allies and the arms race is because I wanted to explain why Europe was such a tense place during 1914. And all of the tension in Europe played a major role into World War One starting, because it was really one small event the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand that blew completely out of proportion into an entire world war. And new imperialism, the alliances, the arms race, all those were factors that played in to that blowing out of proportion. So another thing that contributed to World War One was nationalism, which Jenny already talked a lot about. So I'm not going to talk about it for that long. But basically, because of nationalism, people didn't really hesitate to go to war. Like, they believed that if war broke out, their country would win quickly and decisively, that it would only take a few months. Like, they just had a complete, almost irrational belief in their country and the strength of their country. And they there weren't that many qualms about going to war anymore. They were just ready to go to war because they were just had this fervent nationalist beliefs. And there are some people who were against war, and there were like a few peace movements that came, but people who said that they should seek peace, they were kind of seen as traitors to their country, and that they weren't really, and people said that they weren't experiencing nationalism and that they were just against their country. So that's how nationalism played into the start of World War One. And another thing that played into it was social Darwinism, which we talked about as well. But in 1859, Charles Darwin did natural selection. And so this developed into social Darwinism because of Herbert Spencer. And so now people like in Europe thought that war was just the natural way that the strong are weeded out from the weak. So they viewed war as a natural process. And again, that's another reason why they didn't hesitate to go to war, because it was just something natural that needed to happen. And also this natural time it could happen, and they succeeded, and that would prove that they are the strongest and the best of the human race. And I feel like this picture is something that's kind of funny, but it describes social Darwinism. It's that the strong, the baby on top, is more powerful than the one on the bottom, the weak one, and nature is naturally going to weed them out, and there can only be one of them. Okay, so to review, make this acronym, but I liked it, so I thought I should include it. So these are the causes of World War One, the main ones. So you have militarism, alliances, nationalism, and imperialism. Those are all the underlying causes. And then assassination of Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand, that is the immediate cause of World War One. So that's just an acronym if you ever forget. Okay, so all this tension led to this guy Otto von Bismarck, who we've already studied, but he said this: if there's ever another war in Europe, it will come out of some silly thing in the Balkans. So I know you're probably wondering, what were the Balkans? So let me tell you. The Balkans can be defined culturally, historically, or geographically. And what this means is that there isn't like a set definition, like this is the Balkans and includes these countries and this landmass. But basically, different historians will characterize it as something different. But basically, what people usually describe it as comprising Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Kosovo, Montenegro, Macedonia, Albania, Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova. So basically, just think of Yugoslavia is basically like, that's what helps me remember it. So basically, it's the countries that were comprised in Yugoslavia, and that just helps me remember. So it was an extremely volatile place, and it was called the tinderbox of Europe because there's so many tensions running through it. So you have a lot of ethnic divisions, like you can see by all the different groups that I listed that were living in the Balkans, and there are also a lot of nationalist aspirations. So Turkey started losing its influence in the Balkans, and because Turkey was losing their influence, Austria and Russia Austria-Hungary, and Russia both wanted to gain influence in the Balkans. And Serbia, who was backed by Russia, wanted to create a greater Serbia. And basically, a greater Serbia is just a nation that contains all ethnic Serbs. And again, this reminded me a lot of Yugoslavia, and this was a lot before then, but it's the same principle. And Serbia resented the Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary because they had a lot of Serbs within their borders. And Austria-Hungary annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1908 because Serbia was expanding a lot, so they wanted to stymie that. And so now they had even more Serbs living in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which just led to more resentment um, of Serbia towards Austria-Hungary. And here's a picture of it, so you can see Serbia, Austria-Hungarian Empire. Those are the main two that I'm going to talk about. And then you have the Ottoman Empire over here. The Ottoman Empire, you see this green, it extends throughout here, but then it loses some of its influence. So that's why it's in the green border over there. Because these countries are a part of the Ottoman Empire, and then they aren't anymore. So the green shows when they are, and then that's when they aren't anymore. They're back here. Okay, so all of this tension led to the First Balkan War, which was between the Balkan League and the Ottoman Empire. So the Balkan League consisted of Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro, and it was formed under Russia's guidance and leadership. And the goal of the Balkan League was to take Macedonia away from Turkey, because Turkey was preoccupied in war with Italy, so the Balkan League thought that this was their opportunity to strike and to get Macedonia from them. So declared war on Turkey on October 8th, 1912, and the war ended on May 30th, 1913. So the most significant aspects of the peace treaty were that the Ottoman Empire lost basically all of its European territory, and Macedonia was to be divided among the Balkan allies. And the reason those are significant is because Serbia, Romania, and Greece were supposed to split up Macedonia amongst themselves, but they couldn't really agree on how much land each country should get. So then this ends up leading to another war. So Greece and Serbia, they allied against Bulgaria, and on June 29th, the night of June 29th through 30th, King Ferdinand of Bulgaria decided to have a preemptive strike and to attack the Greek and Serbian troops in Macedonia. But the Bulgarians were quickly defeated. And in this peace treaty, most of Macedonia was split between Greece and Serbia, and Bulgaria only got a small portion of land. So this picture shows how the difference between the beginning of the Balkan Wars and after the Balkan Wars. So you can see Ottoman Empire had all this land back here, that green border of the other picture, and now they've lost almost all their European territory. And you can see how much smaller Serbia is right here, and then you see how much land it gained in the Balkan Wars. So I thought this was a good visual representation of what happened after the Balkan Wars. So the question is, why were these wars important? Why did I include them in the PowerPoint? So because of these wars, Serbia regarded Austria with even more hostility, because Austria-Hungary made Serbia give up Albania after the Second Balkan War. So that just led to more resentment. And there's already a lot of resentment because of Serbian nationalism. So this was not good and just added to more hostility. And also, Austria-Hungary felt a little bit threatened because Serbia had doubled its territory in the wars. So basically, there was just more tension in Europe, and it really contributed to the volatile political mix that fueled the Second Great Explosive Conflict. And Serbian nationalists became even more intent on liberating the South Slavs that were in Austria-Hungary. And so one really important one is Gavrilo Princip, and he was a South Slav nationalist. He was a member of the Young Bosnia movement, and he was trained and given weapons by the Black Hand, which was a Serbian secret society, and he wanted to destroy the Austro-Hungarian rule in the Balkans and basically create a greater Serbia. And so he thought that the best way to do this would be to murder Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the immediate cause of World War I. So this occurred on June 28th, 1914, and it was a Serbian national holiday. And Ferdinand and his wife were visiting Sarajevo, which was the capital of Bosnia, and they were going there for a military inspection. But it probably wasn't the best day because since it was a Serbian national holiday, of course, you have nationalism running high throughout Sarajevo, so it probably wasn't the best idea. And they were just riding throughout the streets in an open air car, and then all of a sudden, someone threw a bomb at them. Another conspirator with Princip, he threw a bomb in the car, but the bomb missed. And so then the governor of Bosnia advised them to change up the route of their trip. But for some reason the lead car didn't really get them, like, they didn't get all of the instructions on the new route. And so the lead driver paused and he was like asking like which way he needs to go. And then at that moment, Princip just saw the opportunity, and then he shot Ferdinand and his wife. And so that eventually, I'll get to why in a second, but that eventually leads to World War I starting. And in order to remember this, I like to present you with this picture. Princip and Miley both never meant to start a war, but I guess it just happened, and they don't know the power that they truly wield. Okay, so Austria had to decide how they were going to respond to the assassination of the heir to the Austrian throne, and that was Ferdinand. I don't think I said that earlier, but it was on the PowerPoint, but he was the heir to the Austrian throne. So there's one guy named Hassendorf who thought he could use the assassination as a means to start his preemptive war against Serbia. So a preventative war. So a preventative war is when you attack the other country before they get the chance to get themselves together in order for them to attack you. So it's not the same as a preemptive strike, which is when you attack another country when they're about to attack you and it's about to be imminent. Preventative war is where you attack them before they have the chance to get ready to attack you. And he wanted to put an end to the national unrest once and for all, and he wanted to enforce the old order. And Francis Joseph, who was the king of Austria-Hungary, he wanted to wait, but Serbia was involved before taking action. Then you have Berchtold, who was the Austrian foreign minister. He wanted to take a hard position towards Serbia. So the prime minister of Hungary, he said that they should just send a list of demands to Serbia. And this was seen as a win-win situation because either Serbia would accept, which would be a brilliant diplomatic success, or Serbia would refuse, making Austria-Hungary seem like the good guys, and Serbia-Hungary just seemed like the people who didn't want to compromise. So Austria-Hungary really wanted to seem justified for starting a war. And so that's why they were thinking about sending these demands. And they also wanted to humiliate Serbia and enhance their prestige in the Balkans. And they felt the reason they wanted to maintain their credibility as a force in the Balkan region was because Serbia was gaining such power in the region, and they just had the Balkan War, so they really were just they just wanted to make sure that people still respected them as a power, and so that's why they really wanted to take a hard position towards Serbia. And also, William II, who's the Emperor of Germany, he previously guaranteed Austria-Hungary support if they started preventative war against Serbia in October 1913. And this was really crucial, and I'm about to get this on the next slide, and because he reaffirmed this on July 6th. So the Austrians decided to present unacceptable ultimatum to send, and then relying on Germany to deter Russia from intervention. And so the Austrians, like, they knew that their ultimatum were unacceptable, but they still decided to send them, which is one of the reasons that they have a lot of responsibility for starting the war, because they could have taken a different approach, but they were really like an aggressive approach to Serbia after Ferdinand's assassination. Okay, so on July 6th, Germany sent the blank check memo to Austria-Hungary, and this was a really significant point in the event. In the events one, Germany said that whatever action Austria-Hungary takes, we'll support it. Basically, is what they said, and so this is extremely significant because now the Austrians could take a hard line against the Serbs when moderation might still have limited the crisis. And the reason they needed Germany's support was because, I said this earlier, but Serbia was backed by Russia. And we all know Russia is like a lot bigger than Austria-Hungary was. So Austria-Hungary was a little bit hesitant to send these ultimatums to Serbia because they knew that Russia would get involved, and they were afraid of Russia. But now that they had Germany's support, they could take that hard line that they wanted to. So if Germany didn't support Austria, it could have remained a local conflict. So then also, sometime in July, the French and the Russians get together, and France promises to stand by its alliance commitments. And this is significant because France is basically saying that they'll continue to support Russia. And the reason that's like important is because that gives Russia the confidence to continue backing Serbia. And because Russia backs Serbia, Serbia feels like they don't have to accept Austria-Hungary's ultimatums. So this is a picture that's just a blank check that just describes the blank check memo. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory, but that's just a visual aid to help anyone who likes visual aids. Okay, so then you have a lot of events that start happening. So first, on July 23rd, Austria-Hungary sends its ultimatum to Serbia. So they demanded the dissolution of secret societies, cessation of anti-Austrian propaganda, and Austrian participation in the investigation of the Sarajevo crime. And they only gave Serbia 2 days to respond to this, and they said that if Serbia didn't agree to all of their conditions, then they would take military action. So July 25th, the Russian Council of Ministers decided that if Austrian forces entered Serbia, then Russia would mobilize its army. And so Russia knew that this would inevitably lead to more counter mobilizations by the other countries, and that it would drift towards war, but they still knew that this is what they planned to do. And I feel like that gives them a little bit of responsibility, but at the same time, like, if they're starting to feel threatened, then it's a natural response to mobilize their army. So that's kind of why I feel like Russia does have like responsibility for it starting, but it was mostly Austria, Hungary, and Germany. And also on July 25th, it's 2 days after the ultimatums were sent, so Serbia responds. And there were some other conditions that I couldn't find what they were, but there were some other conditions that Serbia accepted because they didn't directly challenge their sovereignty. Serbia's sovereignty, but then they just could not accept these two that I've included right here. They couldn't accept these two demands, that Serbian officials should be dismissed because Austria-Hungary wanted them to, and that Austro-Hungarian officials should Serbian soil in proceedings against organizations hostile to Austria-Hungary. So even though Serbia offered to present the issue to international arbitration, Austria-Hungary they didn't want to use diplomacy. They just severed their diplomatic relations and they started mobilizing their army. So on July 26th, Britain tries to get everyone to chill out. So Britain's kind of Britain wanted to get the other major European powers to address the conflict, and France, Italy, and Russia agreed to attend, and Germany refused. And I think this is interesting because it just exemplifies which countries were trying to seek peace, which were all the Triple Entente, and which country was not seeking peace at all. So that was Germany. Okay, so dominoes keep falling, and on July 28th, William II, who's Emperor of Germany, he gets back from a cruise. It's actually interesting because he had been gone this whole time, and when he got back, he tried to put a stop to everything that was going on. And he told the German Foreign Office to tell Austria-Hungary that they didn't have the justification they needed to start a war, but it was too late because while he had been gone on his cruise, the German Foreign Office had been encouraging Austria-Hungary to go to war against Serbia. And so on July 28th, which is the same day that William II gets back, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. And Russia began a partial mobilization against Austria-Hungary. So again, July 29th, Britain calls for an international mediation to resolve the worsening crisis. So Britain's still trying to get everyone to calm down. You can tell Britain doesn't really want this war to keep escalating. But again, it's already the events already happening rapidly, and so it's a little bit too late because Austria-Hungary has already declared war on Serbia. So July 30th, Austria-Hungary attacks the capital, Serbia. Austria-Hungary begins mobilizing on Russian front. So Russia, obviously, if they see the Austro-Hungarian army near them, then they're going to also start mobilizing their army. So July 31st, Germany wants to join the ultimatum game, and Germany sends an ultimatum to both Russia and to France. So Germany demanded that Russia stop mobilizing and demanded France's neutrality if there was a war between Russia and Germany. So neither country accepted the ultimatum, which was what Germany intended and expected, because they could France and Russia could scarcely accede without abandoning the Balkans, each other, and their own security. The one about France, you can see how these ultimatums don't really make sense. They're not Germany didn't really send them expecting them to be accepted, because they're just a little bit, quite frankly, just a little bit ridiculous, because France is already allied with Russia. So of course France can't remain neutral if there's a war between Germany and Russia. And also, why Russia wouldn't stop mobilizing because Austria-Hungary had just attacked the capital of Serbia and was getting ready. It looks like it was getting ready to possibly attack Russia. So you can see how these ultimatums were really just unreasonable. Okay, so things continue to escalate, and on August 1st, Germany declared war against Russia and ordered general mobilization, and France ordered general mobilization. So Germany declared war because Russia didn't accept its ultimatum. And also, this is significant because you can see how Germany and Austria-Hungary, the Central Powers, are the antagonists of the conflict, because they're always the ones that are declaring war. And for most cases, not all the time, but a lot of the time, the country that declares war is kind of the one that's at fault. So Germany attempts to use the Schefflin Plan, which I mentioned earlier, and they send troops into Luxembourg, and they demand from Belgium free passage for German troops. So you can see that this picture over here is illustrating what I'm talking about in these 2 points. But German troops invaded Belgium, which was a neutral country, and Britain demanded that Germany withdraw from Belgium, and Germany declared war on France. Okay, and I also mentioned that Italy declared neutrality. Okay, the reason I mentioned this is because the main Central Powers were Austria-Hungary and Germany, but Italy was also kind of aligned with them. But they were like they Austria-Hungary and Germany were the main ones, but then some sources I saw they also included Italy. But Italy was only like in the agreement between Austria-Hungary and Germany. Italy only had to fight for Austria-Hungary and Germany if it was a defensive war. And since this was obviously Austria-Hungary and Germany were on the offensive, then because of that, Italy was able to declare neutrality. So on August 4th, Britain declared war against Germany. And the reason Britain really didn't want to get involved, but Germany invaded Belgium, which was a neutral country. And Britain had already promised to protect Belgium. And then when Germany invaded Belgium, that was a blatant violation of Belgian neutrality. So Britain had to declare war on Germany because Britain kind of saw Germany as like a bully, and so they declared war on Germany. And then after that, a lot of war declarations start happening. I didn't want to include this because it would just be boring, but basically all the countries, like this country declares war on this country, that country declares war on that country, and that continues and continues, and basically World War is starting at this point. So that was a lot of information. So I actually made this memory tool, and this is just a way to remember all the main events that happened up to World War I. So you have the immediate cause is the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Then you have the blank check memo issued by Germany, conditions or an ultimatum given by Austria-Hungary to Serbia. These conditions are denied by Serbia, which is exactly as Austria-Hungary planned. And then I couldn't really include this, but then Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. And then France and Russia are issued ultimatums by Germany, who historically invaded Belgium. So that's a way to remember everything if you ever just really want to remember which events led to World War I. This will help you. Okay, so basically now that I've given all the background information, I've described everything that happened, I wanted to analyze and explain my thesis. Okay, so mostly the Central Powers were responsible because, first I'll start with Austria-Hungary. So they really used the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand to further their own agenda. They wanted to enhance their own prestige in the Balkans because they felt insecure about that, and they wanted to end the Serbian national unrest within Austria-Hungary. And they intentionally issued unacceptable ultimatums. So it looked like the wrong party and looked like they were justifying starting a war. And they didn't try to submit the situation to international arbitration. And they were the first country to declare war. And like I said before, if you're declaring war, it seems like you're most likely one at fault. And so Austria-Hungary, they were not really seeking peace. They sent their ultimatums, which would have, that probably would have stopped Austria-Hungary. They would have pacified Austria-Hungary if Serbia had accepted the ultimatums. But you saw the ultimatums, and basically they directly challenged Serbia's sovereignty. So you understand that mostly that was Austria-Hungary's fault, and that Austria-Hungary really was looking for war. They were not looking for peace. Same with Germany, because Germany pushed Austria-Hungary to confront Serbia, and thus more and thus bore much responsibility for turning a little war into a world war. So you also have the blank check memo, which was so crucial because it egged Austria-Hungary on, it gave them confidence, and it allowed them to take a hard position against the Serbs. So you also have Germany. They issued ultimatums to France and Russia, and maybe it's true that France and Russia could have put a stop to the conflict if they just accepted them, but this was Germany's fault because they were a little bit ridiculous and they just added to the tension and the conflict that was already in Europe. Meanwhile, the leader of Germany wasn't really even involved in the conflict, and the German Foreign Office convinced Austria to start a war. They were the second country to declare war, and they invaded Belgium, which was a neutral country, and that brought Britain into the war. So they also, but even so, the Triple Entente does have some responsibility. Especially Russia, because Russia backed Serbia, and this gave Serbia confidence because it had the support of a much larger and more populous power. So Serbia felt secure enough to not accept Austria-Hungary's ultimatums. So if Serbia had just accepted the ultimatums, then the war probably wouldn't have occurred, at least at that particular moment. Like Austria-Hungary would have been like set pacified, and Russia didn't accept Germany's ultimatum, and that I mean that would have stopped Germany, but again that was mostly Germany's fault because it was not a reasonable demand. And France, I talked about this, but they promised to stand by their alliance commitments, and that just allowed Russia to back Serbia, which allowed Serbia to not accept the demands. And same with France, they didn't accept Germany's ultimatum. It's ridiculous. Okay, Britain was the least responsible because it tried to encourage peace. It didn't really want to get involved because Serbia wasn't really its main concern. Serbia was just like Russia's main concern, and Britain really did not want to get involved in this war. But Germany dragged them into the war when they violated Belgian neutrality because Britain had already promised to protect Belgium. So that's pretty much everything. So Austria, Hungary, and Germany were the most responsible. Then you have Russia, then you have France, then you have Britain. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. There's my works cited. There's my picture works cited. And I'm done.